kind of crossover for intercompanies wasn't going to happen. Brian Michael Bendis is never going to have Batman and Daredevil team up in his own comic. Never. They actually made a joke about it in Marvel's Waha, where in a jokey situation of things that'll never happen in the comics industry, their joke on that one was hell had frozen over before that was going to happen. Alias is one that is easily, in my opinion, the most important comic in Marvel's 2000s decade. One, it was written by Brian Michael Bendis. Two, it was drawn by Michael Gaydos. And it was the first real Max book. It had cursing and sex, and it had Marvel superheroes in a way that hadn't ever been shown before, because they were cursing and stuff. It was one of the most real books, and probably one of the greatest books of all time, or in my mind. Brian Michael Bendis is easily the most important writer of the 2000s for Marvel. He, along with friends Mark Miller and younger guys like Matt Fraction, Ed Brubaker, he is one of the architects of the Marvel Universe as it is now. He started with Daredevil, and from Daredevil he managed to also get into the Avengers. And with Avengers, he's been one of the main forces behind that for years. Starting with Avengers Disassembled, to House of M, to Secret Invasion, and supposedly they're doing something now with Mars Attacks, but he is probably one of the most defining writers of my generation, primarily because of the way he writes. He writes dialogue that lets the characters bounce off each other in a very David Mamet-like way. When Marvel put him in charge, there was a sort of feeling of flying by the seat of your pants with Bill Jemas. Bill Jemas, for all of his good qualities, he has a couple of bad ones that he'll be remembered for. In the event of the internet, a lot of journalism came out. One journalist, or semi-journalist, was columnist Rich Johnston. Rich Johnston ran several online columns such as Waiting for Tommy, Lying in the Gutters, All the Rage, and he was very good at finding the gossip in the comics industry and reporting on rumors and seeing if they came to fruition or not. He's currently the one of the main writers at bleedingcool.com. If any of you want to check out the site, it's a very cool site. The thing that he reported on early on that really caught people's attention was that Mark Waid was going to be fired off of Fantastic Four. Mark Waid was having one of the greatest runs on Fantastic Four, probably since either Jack Kirby or John Byrne and whatnot. It was one of those kinds of runs where it was partnered up with Mike Wieringo. And him and Ringo were doing good. Unfortunately, Bill Jemas couldn't sit still with it, and he thought he could be doing it better, so he was going to write it himself. However, that didn't happen, supposedly. I don't think Mark Waid was fired off the book long enough for Bill Jemas to actually write anything or not have one of his issues come out. I'm not entirely sure about it. It's not, if you Google it, it's not necessarily going to come up as much. However, Rich Johnston has it under a series called Felicia. Felicia was an inside source giving out information about what was happening with the higher-ups at Marvel. To this day, I do not know who Felicia is. I don't think anyone other than Rich Johnston and Felicia and maybe a few others knows who Felicia is. Now, Rich Johnston will play, not a pivotal role, but you can actually trace comics history through his columns, because while there is a lot of smoke and mirrors going on, you can find out about the publishers that backstabbed creators. You can find out about the creators that had something of an online feud with each other. One incident was two writers calling each other out over what was basically dirty laundry, because the publisher was considered a frat house, and there was just too much monkey business going on for one writer's taste. DC Comics in the 2000s has had several scandals, shall we say. Editors leaving because they were feeling they were being pushed out. There were editors that were leaving because they felt mistreated on a very basic level. And one such editor was actually offered blackmail, or not blackmail, but a bribe. She was bribed with, one such editor was bribed with health insurance to be quiet about certain problems in the company. Then there was an issue of people not liking those in charge. Paul Levitz had been with DC Comics since the 80s. He'd been with them even before that in different positions, but he was a very high up person when he was appointed VP to Jeanette Kahn's president. Now, Jeanette Kahn left DC Comics early in the 2000s to go on to other things. Paul Levitz was named publisher, and under him, several high-profile books were pulped. That was some of his scandals. He had issues of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill's series, go through the ringer over minor things, but because of this, it strained Alan Moore's relationship with ABC, which was a part of Wildstorm, which was a part of DC. Supposedly there was a firewall in place to stop DC from interfering with Alan Moore's work, but it was under Paul Levitz's tenure that certain things happened where issues were stopped. One such writer was writing a second volume to a very popular comic, and because of this writer's storyline that used DC's analogous characters to DC Comics' main sellers, Superman and Batman, because there was a homosexual depiction of these characters. That was kiboshed, basically. And one such writer left for the other side of the street in Marvel for a very long time. Alan Moore had a lot of issues with Warner Brothers and 20th Century Fox. And basically, most movie studio, any business with his movies, or any business with movies based on his books, Alan Moore usually had annoyances with. He didn't want to be associated with them, but he was still being dragged in despite his wishes not to be associated with them. And eventually, Alan Moore came to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Black Dossier. The Black Dossier was an information book done as a comic. It's going to be a very big thing. It would have fold-out pages done like a Tijuana Bible. It would have a record sent out with it. Unfortunately, it got butchered. It was butchered in such a way that he actually left DC Comics and took his work with him, The League. The League was the only thing he could take with him, and he took that to Top Shelf. So DC Comics loses Alan Moore again. Underneath Paul Levitz is Dan DiDio. Dan DiDio is a hit or miss guy, in my opinion, because a lot of the stuff he does is a hit. However, he micromanages, and you can see it in certain things. One being probably his crowning achievement, 52. 52 was a weekly comic when nobody thought weekly comics could be done, especially the one they were attempting, because it would have high-profile writers, a team of them, writing issues, writing segments, and it would have the same cover artist for 1 year. And they would have rotating art teams. The problem with 52 was not that the series was bad, but when the editor of the series leaves midstream at issue 26, a new editor steps up, which was unplanned for, like not intentionally, like he didn't say I was going to edit 1 through 26, no, he's going to edit 1 through 52, but somehow he leaves early on enough that he needs to be replaced. Like, somebody had to have made things a little bit difficult for him, and when you're the biggest name in the business next to the publisher, and they're working on one of your flagship series, one has to imagine that it's next to you, it's on you. Here's the striking gold. Oh my darling, oh my darling. Oh my darling Clementine.